Humans have milked almost everything with a nipple. Cows, goats, sheep, horses, camels, reindeer, even yaks at 14,000 feet in the freezing cold because someone decided that was worth the effort. And yet there's one animal we've lived alongside for over 9,000 years, raised by the billions, and eaten every single part of, that we have almost never milked. Pigs. Think about how strange that actually is. We eat pork belly, pig ears, pig feet, pig blood, pig intestines stuffed with more pig. There is barely a scrap of a pig that hasn't ended up on a plate somewhere in the world. But the milk? The one thing every mammal on Earth produces by definition? We skip it completely. No pig milk in the grocery store, no pig milk cheese section, no pig milk lattes. Just nothing. And once you start looking into why, the answer gets stranger the deeper you go. Let's start with the obvious question. Is pig milk actually drinkable? Because if it were toxic, this would be a very short video. It's not. Pig milk is completely safe for humans. It's not spoiled, it's not poisonous, and despite old wives' tales claiming it causes madness or sickness, none of that holds up. In fact, by most accounts, pig milk is richer than what you're used to. It carries roughly 8.5% fat, more than double the fat content of cow's milk. Chefs who've actually tasted it describe something warm, tangy, almost sharp, closer to unpasteurized cow's milk than anything else. One Dutch farmer even turned it into cheese and described it as saltier and creamier than anything made from cow's milk. So taste isn't the problem. Safety isn't the problem. Something else is going on. And it's not just chefs who've taken an interest. Scientists have too, for a reason that has nothing to do with cooking. Out of every farm animal, pig milk is one of the closest chemical matches to human breast milk. The fat structure, the way the proteins break down, even the immune compounds in the colostrum, the first milk a sow produces right after birth, line up with human milk more closely than cow's milk ever has. Researchers studying infant nutrition have used pig milk as a reference point for decades, precisely because pigs are so biologically similar to us in digestion and metabolism. So in a strange twist, the one farm animal we never bothered to milk might actually be the one whose milk is most like our own, which makes the myths around it even stranger. For generations, there were whispers in farming communities that pig milk was somehow dangerous, that it curdled the stomach, or worse, that it could send a person mad. None of that has ever held up under any kind of scrutiny. It's not medically true in any sense. If anything, it looks like the kind of story people tell themselves after failing to get near a sow enough times to try it. Easier to decide the milk is cursed than to admit the pig just won that round. Here's where it gets interesting. Go back 9,000 years to the very beginning of pig domestication, and you'll find that early farmers had a choice. Cows, goats, sheep, and pigs were all domesticated around roughly the same era. All four are mammals. All four produce milk, but only 3 of them became dairy animals. Somewhere along that timeline, humanity looked at the pig and quietly decided, not this one. And for 9,000 years, nobody seriously challenged that decision. Which raises the real question. What did our ancestors know that we've just inherited without ever asking? The first clue is in the anatomy. A cow has 4 teats. A goat has 2. A pig has somewhere between 8 and 16, arranged in 2 uneven rows along her belly. That sounds like it should mean more milk, not less. More outlets, more supply, right? Except nature didn't build the system for extraction. It built it for speed. A cow lets down her milk over roughly 10 minutes, giving you a long, steady window to work with. A sow releases hers in a burst that lasts about 15 seconds. 15 seconds across more than a dozen teats, and then it's gone until the next cycle 2 hours later. No hand and no machine ever built can move fast enough to catch that. And even if you somehow could, the payout barely justifies the effort. A dairy cow can produce around 65 pounds of milk a day. A sow, working flat out, produces about 13. That's roughly a fifth of the yield, from an animal that's far harder to reach in the first place. Multiply that gap across an entire farm, and you're looking at a business model that collapses before it starts. But yield and anatomy still don't explain the whole story. Because plenty of low-yield animals get milked anyway. People milk reindeer. People milk yaks. What makes pigs different comes down to something much more basic. They don't want to be touched. A lactating sow is one of the more dangerous animals you can walk up to on a farm. Cattle have spent thousands of years being bred for calm temperament around humans. Goats, even the stubborn ones, tolerate hands near their udders. Pigs never went through that process because nobody was selecting them for docility around milking. They were selected for meat, for litter size, for how fast they put on weight. Nobody ever bred the aggression out of a nursing sow because nobody needed to, and a nursing sow has every evolutionary reason to be aggressive. She's protecting 8, 10, sometimes 14 piglets at once, and in the wild, that litter is exactly the kind of easy meal a predator would go for. So when something approaches, especially something the size of a human, her instinct isn't to stand still, it's to charge. Farmers who've actually tried this describe getting within 15 feet of an unfamiliar sow and watching her rear up defensively before you've even reached for a bucket. One Kentucky chef, determined to make pig milk cheese, spent weeks trying to earn a sow's trust before he could get near her. His method involved rubbing pig manure on his own jacket just so he'd smell familiar enough to approach while she slept. That's the level of effort required to get a single cup of milk. And a 250-pound sow doesn't leave you with a bruise if it goes wrong. It leaves you in the hospital, or worse. So now you've got an animal that gives up its milk in 15-second bursts from over a dozen small teats in low overall volume while actively trying to injure anyone who approaches. At that point, the question stops being, why don't we drink pig milk? And starts being, how has anyone ever managed to get any at all? And a few people have tried. There's a small operation in the Netherlands where farmers milk their pigs by hand every couple of hours, racing the 15-second window with coffee cups because no machine exists for the job. On a good round, 4 people working together might collect about 100 milliliters, less than half a cup split between them, for real effort and real risk. That's not a dairy industry. There's one more piece to this, and it might be the biggest one. A dairy cow can be milked while she's pregnant again, keeping the supply chain running almost continuously. A sow cannot. Once she's lactating, her body won't support another pregnancy until the piglets are weaned. So even if you solved the aggression problem, and even if someone invented a 14-cup milking machine fast enough to catch a 15-second letdown, you'd still be left with an animal that only produces milk in short, interrupted windows, with long gaps in between. There is no version of this that scales, which brings us back to where we started. Every dairy animal we rely on today was chosen for a very specific combination: decent yield, a long enough milking window, and a temperament that doesn't try to kill you in the process. Cows check every box. Goats and sheep check most of them. Pigs check none of them. It's not that pig milk failed some kind of taste test or safety review. It never even got that far. It was disqualified by biology before humans ever got a real chance to decide, and maybe that's the part worth sitting with. We didn't reject pig milk because we tried it and didn't like it. We rejected it because getting to it at all means outrunning a 250-pound animal that's willing to fight you for it, for a payout smaller than what a goat gives you without complaint. Somewhere out there, in a Dutch barn or a Kentucky kitchen, a handful of people are still racing that 15-second window anyway, cup in hand, because they want to know what 9,000 years of farmers already decided wasn't worth finding out. And maybe there's something a little humbling in that. We managed to put a man on the moon, sequence our own genome, and build machines that can milk 1,000 cows an hour without a single human hand touching an udder. But a farm animal we've lived beside for 9 millennia still has us beat, guarding a resource we can't take from her without her permission. For all our tools and all our history, the pig in this one narrow way never needed to adapt to us. We were the ones who had to walk away.